Welcome into another edition of the Item Insider podcast. I'm your host, Josh Criswell, and we're about to dive into one of the best high school football matchups that the state of Texas is going to see all season long. Your Huntsville Hornets are off to a 4-0 start this season, including 1-0 in district play, up to number 10 in the state, number 5 in the Houston area. And coming up next, the showdown with number 3 A&M Consolidated, easily the biggest matchup on the Hornets schedule all regular season long. And, if history tells us anything, especially in recent years, it looks like this one's probably going to decide who ends up being the District 10 champion. Going to bring on a couple good guests, talk about the matchup. First off is going to be Alex Miller of the Eagle. Then going to bring on Mike Lucas from KAGS TV out there in Bryan College Station. But before we get to our interviews, just a couple of quick notes. Got some area teams in a playoff push right now. New Waverly is one win away from clinching their first playoff berth since 2016. They play Kuntz at home this weekend, and they have a good chance to win that one and lock up that playoff berth. And not only that, but continue to fight for that number 2 seed. Trinity, who didn't win a game all year last year, is also on the cusp of a playoff spot. And, they have two wins in a row and coming into 2 really big ones to close out the season. And then also Alpha Omega, they're riding a little bit of a winning streak, and if they can pick up a win over Allen Academy this weekend, that's going to be a huge one for them, as far as their playoff seeding and their hopes of a district title go. But without further ado, and of course, before we go into our interviews, Huntsville Volleyball's first place in District 16 5A, up to a great start in their new league. They're playing up in Region 2 now, and they're 4-1. And have a really big showdown coming up against Tyler on the road this Friday. But that is it for that. We're going to dive right into our interview right now with Alex Miller of the Eagle in Bryan College Station. Alex, we appreciate you joining us today. And, I guess, first things first, it's an exciting time of year. It seems like this game, Huntsville versus A&M Consolidated, decides the district these past 3 years. You think we have a good chance of that being the case this year as well?
Absolutely. I mean, 2 top 10 teams. It's early in district. There's a lot of football to be played, but you got to think that the winner of this game has the upper hand and the track to win the district championship, even though it's only after week 2.
Right. And they lost a couple of really good players. I think they had 3 or 4 Division I players at the skill positions alone, no longer on that team from last year that won the district. But they keep on rolling. I mean, they're 5-0, number 3 in the state. Got a lot of talented pieces, but what is it that makes this Consol team so dangerous?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they just reloaded and they didn't skip a beat. They did lose a ton of talent. I mean, it's no question they lose Brian Darby and Nate Floyd, Devin Price, some dudes on the defense, Mikkel Williams, but they found guys to step in and step up. They've got Vince Sheffield and Eric Goodman on offense. Kyle Willis and Sutton Lake are doing a really good job. And at receiver, they don't have the star power, but they're doing it by committee. And Willis has been very efficient at quarterback. And so they really just haven't skipped a beat. And, Coach Fedora, he is one heck of a coach. And so he had those guys ready, and they've been rolling all season.
Yeah, and I think that coaching matchup is one of the things that makes this one so special every year because it's never a dull moment. And it seems like as far as the league goes, this is the game that everyone has circled, whether it's Coach Fedora over at Consol or Coach Southern here, at Huntsville. Those are 2 of the best in the state. You ask any coach, they'll tell you the same thing. How excited are you? I think, is this your first time covering this matchup, or have you seen these 2 teams before?
Well, so Abigail from us is going to be at the game this week. She's going to be there on Friday, but I've had a chance to watch Consol once this year. I watched them last week, but I've written a few feature stories on their players, and so I've gotten to know the team a little bit here and there. And yeah, I mean, this is gonna be a huge matchup. I think their guys know how important this game is for the outlook of the rest of the season. They know the history. They've got some dudes who have been on varsity and been a part of these games before. So this isn't unfamiliar to them. They're used to it. And so, yeah, I think that they're ready and they understand the magnitude of this game, knowing the implications that lie ahead.
Yeah, and you know, you mentioned Vince Sheffield earlier. He's a guy who, you know, for the past 2 years has been one of the best defenders in this entire district. You know, what are the things that impress you the most? You know, you've seen him a little bit more than me. What are the things that make him such a weapon on the defensive side? Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, he's moved around a little bit from the line to linebacker, and really just has that versatility that you look for, not just now, but at the next level.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. He was all state at defensive end last year, and Mikael Williams graduated, and Coach Fedora came up to him and said, "Hey, we need someone to play Mike linebacker. That's the quarterback of our defense, and who better than your all-state defender?" And Vince, he's tall, he's slender. You can move him around. Yeah, he plays middle linebacker, but he's great in blitz packages. They run that three-man front, and so you can really move him around. He's so comfortable in the defense. He's such a playmaker, and he's really the X factor on A&M Consolidated's defense. But you can't forget about Eric Goodman too. I mean, he is such a stud. He's strong off the edge. He leads Consol in tackles this season. He's got 61. He's already got 13 tackles for loss. You know, last week against Lamar Consolidated, I saw him in the backfield quite often. And so that kind of two-man duo, and then you add in Jaden Thomas up front too. It's really the front seven that makes Consol's defense so strong, and they've been playing pretty well in the secondary too. So this is a pretty good Tigers defense with some big dudes up front, and they get help on the back end too, which is pretty pivotal.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's no doubt that these are probably the top two defenses in this district. But going over the offensive side, have a couple of weapons as well. You mentioned quarterback Kyle Willis, and then Sutton Lake, who's kind of your all-around jack of all trades on offense. You know, those two guys are really dangerous. What can the Huntsville defense expect from those two?
Yeah, Kyle Willis, I mean, he manages the offense really well. You know, not a lot of mistakes. He's very efficient, throws the ball well. He's a pretty big guy, so he can be a little tough to take down. Sutton Lake, I mean, he is just so explosive, and to me, he's kind of a hidden weapon coming into this year. You know, he battled some injuries. He wasn't the starter, and now as a senior, he's carrying the load. In that first game against Waco University, he sprung for 5 touchdowns, and he hasn't let his foot off the gas pedal since. You know, he had over 100 yards rushing against Lamar Consolidated, and then in the second half, they threw a little screen pass to him. He ran all the way down the right sideline, got to midfield, cut all the way across the field, and ran down the left sideline for an 88-yard touchdown. And so he's very versatile. They can use him out of the backfield. He's shifty, he's patient, finding the hole. He hits the hole and goes. He doesn't hesitate and try and dance around. He just gets upfield, gets yards, and then, yeah, they can use him in the passing game, and Willis is effective. The one concern I have about Consol's offense is that offensive line. They allowed several sacks last week, and I think that's been a little bit of a concern this season for them. And I know Huntsville's got such a strong defense, especially up front. So that's going to be a pivotal matchup to watch, A&M Consolidated's offensive line against Huntsville's defensive line.
Yeah, I think the one constant through Huntsville's 4 games this season, they've had their struggles offensively, and they've had some breakdowns everywhere. But it seems like the defensive line's been one area that's been rock solid, even with an injury here or there. I think they have 20 sacks through 4 games. Ed Bobino's up to like 11.5 on the year, 2 300-pound defensive tackles. If that Consol offensive line isn't able to slow down that Huntsville defensive front, do you see them being able to get anything going on offense?
Yeah, I mean, you said it. I mean, that's going to be the X factor of where this game's decided. And I'm really curious to see what Consol's got up front. They're going to move the ball. I mean, it's a Lee Fedora offense. They haven't shown that they can't move the ball this season. Do they move it at the rate that they have? I'm not sure. I think this will be one of Consol's lower scoring games because of that. But, Consol's going to get theirs. And Huntsville is definitely going to be probably the best defensive line they've seen yet. Yeah, and Ed Bobino, he's having a great season. I went and talked with Coach Izar last week at Rudder, and he mentioned him, and I went and looked up his stats, and yeah, that dude is huge, and he's having a really huge season. So I'm really intrigued to see what that matchup holds on Friday night.
Yeah, really exciting one coming up at Bauer Stadium, 7:30 kickoff, and going to be probably a lot of scouts in the stands for this one. Got some really good prospects on both teams, but now we're going to dive into just District 10 5A as a whole, and we have another one of our good friends, Mike Lucas from KAGS TV over there in Bryan College Station, join us. Mike, we're chopping it up. Huntsville Consol this weekend. Probably one of the best games in the state we're going to see all year. But the topic I want to talk to you guys about right now is District 10 5A Division II. I mean, we talk about the North Shore, Atascocita district down in Houston and the Duncanville district up in Dallas as the districts of doom in Texas high school football. But I think in District 10, they might have a similar case with what's going on down there. What do you think, Mike?
Well, I'm going to steal the stat that you sent me this morning of the top 5 teams in the district being 21-3. You have a couple undefeateds, a couple teams with Rudder and Fulshire being 4-1. Heading into last week, Rudder had the most dynamic offense in the state by the numbers. Huntsville's defense is as good as you'll find anywhere. Consol kind of a little more balanced than both those teams with a really good defense and a really solid offense. I don't know much about Lake Creek or Fulshire yet, besides their records are really darn good. So, yeah, when you have 5 teams in a district, all at least 4-1 or better, only 4 can make the playoffs. Every game is absolutely crucial in this district schedule. So, yeah, I mean, North Shore is probably the best team in the entire country. I don't know if Consol, Huntsville is at that level, but 1 through 5, good luck finding a better 1 through 5 than 21-3.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at the rankings, and Consol obviously number 3, Huntsville number 10, and then in the Houston area poll for all of Class 5A that combines D1 and D2, Huntsville number 5 and Lake Creek there at number 10, and then can't forget Fulshire started off 4-0 before losing to Lake Creek last week. But I mean, Alex, this is a competitive district from top to bottom, but are there any teams in particular that you've noticed that you think can maybe challenge Huntsville or Consol for maybe one of those top 2 spots, or at least for that number 3 spot in the league?
I mean, you just got to look right across town and look at the Rudder Rangers. They started 4-0. I know they lost last week to Huntsville. I wasn't at the game, but it sounded like Rudder made some really pivotal mistakes in the first half. Izar made some very bad interceptions, and they just weren't – that offense has been so electric this season. They just weren't able to get it rolling. And so – but the thing is, Rudder is so capable of putting up points, and they're so hungry to win. They're so hungry to get to the playoffs, and that is their goal. Their motto is something to prove, and they have something to prove, and they've got the dudes to prove it. And I'm really curious what their game this week's going to look like. They're going and playing Lake Creek, who is very dangerous. How does Rudder respond to that loss against Huntsville? That was definitely probably a crushing loss to them because they had tasted a lot of success already this season, and that was a game that they had circled. So starting district play with a sour taste in your mouth, that was rough for them probably, and I'm really curious how they respond going on the road and playing Lake Creek, who they're a dangerous team. And so I definitely think that Rudder is a challenger. They're tied for 3rd now. They lost that opening game, but they can definitely run the table and go. How many teams are in this district? Seven, yeah. And I mean, they could go 6-1. They could go 5-2.
They looked like a playoff team out there last week. I will say, someone that's covered all of Huntsville's games this season, and I've had people from the Houston area to out in Bryan. I think Coach Izar said it himself. They have the best D-line, one of the best defenses in the state. But I will say that Rudder, and primarily because of Keithron Lee, was just able to hurt them in ways that no team has all season long.
Look, I want to chime in with that Rudder-Huntsville game last week. There were a few plays that changed the entire complexion of that game. So
absolutely. And it was on the defensive end.
Really on both. First drive of the game for Huntsville, it's about the 30-yard line, 4th and 9. They hit the tight end on a little slant route. Perfect pass from A.J. Wilson. Rudder gets that stop and prevents that opening drive touchdown. Momentum swing. Rudder gets the ball back. I think it was 3rd and 8, and they hit that deep ball to Marcus Dials on a go route. Gets called back for holding. Rudder punts, or they end up throwing an interception later on the drive. Those 2 plays. And then you get the Keithron Lee interception as Huntsville's coming down on that second drive. he doesn't get tackled in the open field by defenders, but somehow A.J. Wilson brings him down.
Tracks him down.
Huntsville's quarterback at the 12-yard line. They don't
Yeah.
score. They go for it on 4th down. Huntsville comes right back and scores. The game, it's 36-17. Huntsville, I thought, was a better team. That defensive line dominated and really forced Rudder into some mistakes, but the game was closer than I think the score ever actually indicated.
And I think it was within a touchdown late in that game. I think in the 4th quarter, and I think they were driving, and it was one of those situations. I think it was like a 3rd down near the Huntsville red zone, and then Jadarian White, just gets an interception in the end zone to end the game.
Yeah, so going off what Alex said, it would not surprise me if Rudder beats anyone in this district. I don't think it would surprise me if Huntsville beats anyone in this district. It definitely won't surprise me if Consol beats anyone in this district. And then we'll see about Lake Creek and Fulshire. But you have 5 really good teams for 4 playoff spots. One of these really talented teams is going to miss the playoffs. Personally, I hope it's not one of the 3 we covered, because I think all 3 deserve a chance to show what they can do in the Texas State playoffs. But yeah, that Rudder game, despite being a 21 or 19-point game, even when it was 22-3, it just never felt like it was that far out of hand.
No, and it's that Rudder's explosive offense is going to keep them in games all season. And I'm really excited to see what they can do as a playoff team, because if they get in as a 3 or 4 seed, they have the firepower to go out and shock a district champion.
Yeah, that's a 3 or 4 seed you do not want to face right out the gates for sure.
Yeah. Keith Ron Lee by himself could beat any team in the state virtually. So, yeah. Keith number 5. I like Keith Ron a lot. Super nice kid. But if I'm another team in the state, I want to stay as far away from that Izar Lee connection as possible.
Yeah, no, I think the thing that impressed me more than anything, as shifty as he was on the open field, was that second touchdown grab that he had, where he made like an acrobatic 360 grab and then had the sense to extend his arm for the touchdown. So electric performance from Rudder. Had a setback, but I think we're going to see really big things from them down the road. Alex, I know you got to run, but tell the listeners out there where they can find you at on social media and everything.
Yeah, you can follow me at AlexMill20, and you can follow all of our updates at Brazos Sports and at theeagle.com for all the local Bryan College Station and some of the surrounding area for Brazos Valley football games.
Awesome, Alex. Well, we appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thanks, guys, for having me.
Later, Alex.
See y'all. There we go.
By the way, Alex Miller, very underrated chef.
Is that right?
If you don't care for his high school football takes, at least follow Alex for his barbecue and his food pictures.
I have seen the barbecue smoking pictures on Saturdays. That's nice.
He does it right. He does it right for sure.
Makes me jealous living in my apartment. But yeah, Mike, I brought you on because you were out shooting at that game last week, and obviously, we want to dive into the Huntsville side of things a little bit more. We've talked about this team and you've covered them from afar, but got out and finally got to see them last week. What was the thing that impressed you the most about the Huntsville Hornets in their district opener?
I'll give you 2. The obvious one's the defensive line. I mean, that defensive line, Coach Izar told us, you told me, I've heard from a couple different people, that's as good as it gets in the state. And, it's one thing to hear it. It's another thing to see it. And the way they just completely manhandled Rudder's front 7, and I say 7 because they had tight ends and running backs chipping as well. And then you see EJ Izar still running for his life on 85% of his dropbacks. Ed Bobino, for a 320-pound guy, looks like he runs a 4.4 at times, chasing the quarterback down.
I mean, he's one of the most underrated defensive line prospects.
He was unbelievable.
State. Maybe one of the most in the entire country. It's insane. 11.5 sacks in 4 games.
Yeah, and by the way, Eric,
3 6As and a 5A.
Eric Goodman, Consol's defensive lineman, has almost equally as ridiculous numbers. Yeah. So that little one-on-one, I mean, they're not going to go against each other, but that one-on-one, which defensive tackle can create more pressure from the inside should be a fun subplot to watch. But yeah, that defensive line was awesome. I'm forgetting last names, but Sebastian on one end and Q on the other end, with their speed getting to the edge, while the 2 Bobino brothers eat up about 17 blockers by themselves on the middle like it was a Sunday brunch. Utterly.
Well, and one of the interesting storylines is Sebastian. He actually was dealing with a little bit of an injury. So Seth Carroll came in, off the bench and came in first varsity start. He was the guy that had that strip sack that ended up being.
Was he 42?
Yeah, he was the kid that was coming off the edge, and he came off first varsity start and made a huge play right there in the first half.
I swear to you, man, Huntsville must have defensive lineman trees behind the high school because every year they got 4 or 5 guys, and it's just like, hey, we lose Bryson Hayes, we lose Tavondre Sweat, we lose the oldest Bobino, and hey, let's just pick a new apple. They're gonna come in and be an absolute stud. So that was impressive. But other than that, the whole defense was athletic. Between Ethan Miner, White, number 5, I forget his name, Jadarian White, I think his name is, number 5. He had those 2 picks. That entire defense from the front to the back just looked like dudes. And it sounds dumb, but you know the bus test? You see a team walk off the bus and you're like, oh. Every one of those dudes passed the bus test with flying colors. I mean, you didn't look at that team and say, oh, this dude looks like the guy that we should be attacking. Every one of those kids looked like they've been eating weights and pooping results since, age 4. Like there was steroids in their Wheaties as kids. Like, there must be something in that Huntsville water because those dudes look like grown men, and they played like it too. So that whole defense I was impressed by. And also A.J. Wilson threw the ball a lot better than I remember him throwing the ball last year. I wasn't there for the second half, but he made a couple big throws on 3rd and 4th down. Keith Ron made that great play on the interception, but
probably one of the 4 or 5 people in this district,
that can,
even this area, that can make that play.
Exactly. I mean, testing him on 3rd down, maybe that's not the right play call, but either way, that's just an incredible play. The deep ball down the sideline to number 1, he couldn't have thrown it any better, right in front of the safety, behind the cornerback. So I was impressed with him. He looked very, very good as well.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned that defense and especially that defensive line. I think the moment that said it to me more than anything is I think it was one of those 4th and 1s near midfield, and they had like a 4th and 2, and Huntsville stopped them, and they tried to run up in the middle on them, and everyone on the sideline is looking around like, why are you trying to run up the middle on this team? Did you not see the goal line stand that happened last week?
Or the goal line stand earlier in the game.
Yeah, or early in the game.
and sometimes you could surprise a team by going against what they're not expecting to do. My guess is Izar assumed Huntsville would think that they were going to do a jet sweep to Keith Ron or something, but
when you have 2 300-pound defensive tackles, it doesn't matter.
So I interviewed Ed yesterday for our Game of the Week story that airs later tonight. Is this gonna air tonight, Josh?
Yeah, this will come out here sometime in the next couple hours.
Well,
at 6 o'clock. Give a little teaser, yeah.
Yeah, we have our Game of the Week story. We do it. I talked to Ed Bobino and Jordan Woodbury from Huntsville. They both said they both told me we think we're the best defense in the nation. It was their words. And
yep, Ed said that 2 weeks ago, or he said that after they had the goal line stand to beat CU King. Yeah. He said they're the best defense in the country.
And you know what? More power to until a team can consistently move the ball and score on them. I think they have every right to feel that way. And I asked Jordan, I said, hey, Consol's defense is pretty darn good too. They haven't allowed a point in 2 weeks. So how does practicing against your own defense help you guys? And Jordan, it's kind of a short speaker, doesn't say a whole lot, but I love this quote. And he goes, we move the ball against our own defense. What do you think we'll do against the second best in the district? And they kind of laughed. And
that's funny.
And I just love, they're such a young team, Huntsville is. And when you can build confidence from within like that, I just think it does tenfold for your team moving forward. So
yeah, and
I'm excited. It should be a great match. And last year's game was great too. Like last year's
every
game was
year,
fantastic.
It's the game of the district. Like every single year, it's the game of the season in District 10.
Yeah.
But you mentioned it though, and that confidence. I think that a lot of that has to do with Coach Southern and the fact that it's something that I talk about a lot. But whenever you're a head coach that's at a program for as long as he's been at Huntsville, these kids from the minute they walk into Mance Park Middle School, they're a part of that Huntsville High football program. So this is nothing new. Winning's nothing new to them. So these kids, maybe it is their first time playing a huge role at the varsity level, but they know it's expected of them. And I mean, you just look down, in the system. I don't think that Huntsville's had a team lose like at any level this year. Like I think they were 10-0 undefeated at some point last week. I don't think they've lost one since. So I mean, that's a testament to a program that is just rolling on towards continuing to be a power.
It goes back to what I said earlier. There must be some magical high school football garden behind the high school, behind the tennis facility, or behind the practice soccer field behind the high school where, it's like in Florida, you got your banana trees, your orange trees, yada, yada. They just got defensive line, cornerback trees, and Coach Southern's just going out there every year picking up a full harvest.
No doubt. Well, one thing before I go, I guess two things. One more on the Huntsville Consol topic. Are you allowed to give a prediction or no? Will you be covering this one?
I will be out there. I can pick, but I haven't seen Consol. I have not seen Consol in
Well, how
person this year.
about we do this then? Instead of pick this game, will the winner, I'm going to go ahead and say yes, will the winner of this game be the District 10 champion?
Yeah. These are the two best teams in the district. I know we talked about Lake Creek earlier. We talked about Full Shear. These two defenses, I think, are both elite.
Region 3 outside of Fort Bend Marshall, who I don't think's given up a point all year. I mean, you've got Fort Bend Marshall, and I think it's right there with Consol and Huntsville as 2A and 2B in this whole region.
I actually wholeheartedly agree with you. This will be Consol's first, I don't say real test. San Angelo Central, gave them a good game, but they lost so many talented players from last year. Devin Price, Brian Darby, Nate Floyd, all those guys. There's more than just those guys, Gage Paul. This is their first real test with this new crop of players. And I wish I had seen them earlier to give you a pick, Josh. I just haven't seen them in person, so I don't want to pick without seeing them. But like Sutton Lake's been fantastic, the new running back. Kyle Willis has over 1,000 yards in 5 games. Or he had over 1,000 in 4 games. He added to that last week. They haven't allowed a point in 2 weeks. Wesley Graves, Jalen Walters, they have weapons. And similarly to how I said Huntsville has just this pipeline of talent coming in, so does Consol. They don't rebuild, they just reload. And Eric Goodman, the defensive lineman for Consol, told me yesterday, this game's going to come down to which team can control the line of scrimmage. Plain and simple. And Coach Fedora kind of said the same thing. I don't know if I'm putting my money on any team outside of Huntsville in that department with the Bobino brothers and their defensive line, but don't sleep on Consol in that regard by any – if you do, you're making a big mistake to nobody but yourself. That's what I'll say. I think this game should be close again. I think it's kind of like Arkansas A&M, where even if the team isn't as good as the other, somehow it's going to stay close and be wonky. I know Huntsville, what they won by 2 years ago in College Station. It was like 31-17 or something like that.
Yeah, they won by a couple touchdowns. But
it was still a competitive game.
It was still a close game, yeah. And with the playmakers you have on both sides, a game like this can turn on a dime at any moment of time. We saw that last week.
So seeing Huntsville last week, I don't know if I'd put money on anyone else, but I haven't seen Consol, so I can't give you my – it's not a cop-out, Josh. I wish I could pick this game. I haven't seen Consol yet, so I don't feel comfortable – giving you a full evaluation of the Tigers until I actually get a chance to see them in person.
Maybe we'll get a playoff matchup down the road, and we can.
I'll pick that. I promise you, I'll pick that.
Good deal. Well, before we go, we're gonna shift gears a little bit, jerk the wheel over to the college scene. We broke the story earlier this week over at the Item. Sam Houston State starting some major field house renovations that, in my opinion, is going to put them right at the top of the FCS level in terms of those facilities. You saw the renderings that we put out. What are your initial thoughts, and what can that do for the Bearcats, from a program and from a recruiting standpoint?
I'll tell you this from my very limited recruiting experience personally, as a not very highly wanted D3 basketball player, facilities make a difference. And then you talk to the guys in the area who are getting recruited, and one of the things you ask, hey, what'd you like about this school over this school? A lot of times it's the coach, it's proximity to home, but also you hear a lot of they just have better facilities. And in today's day and age where you see LSU as a new locker room every 3 years because they want to have the newest and best locker room. Alabama does the same. A&M spends a ton of money on their facilities. That's something kids these days want. And if you don't have them, you are at a severe disadvantage recruiting-wise, because if everything else is equal, playing opportunity, coach is great, facilities good. Well, then you're going to this school, and frankly, Sam Houston's Fieldhouse, which it's not bad, but it's just not at the level that some of these other elite.
1986.
Yeah, it's older. It's older, and it was probably top of the art, state of the art in 1986. But 1986 was a long time ago, Josh. I don't think either of us were born in 1986. So yeah, the Fieldhouse is older than we are. And when you can upgrade the facilities, it puts excitement back in the program. It gives you a sense of pride. With all sports, not just football. It also houses the track locker rooms and the athletic offices. And then lastly, sports training is a huge thing, by the way. Like, people sleep on that because it's not glamorous.
And that space that they had in those renderings, you can check them out at itemonline.com/sports. Those renderings, I mean, what they're going to be able to do from a medical and nutrition standpoint is going to be amazing, because they already have the staff in place. Now they just have the tools that they need.
Yeah, you have to give for something to flourish, you need the people and you need the resources. And Sam's always had the people, haven't always had the resources. With this new state-of-the-art facility they're trying to bring here, I saw in your article, Josh, almost a $12 million project. It better be state-of-the-art for $12 million. You finally have that combination in place to make Bearcat athletics as successful as humanly possible.
And I mean, from a Battle of the Piney Woods perspective, not to throw too much shade at SFA, but SFA made their big recruiting ploy with their fake Southland Fall Championship that they claimed over the weekend. Then, bam, 2 days later, Sam Houston State, brand new facilities. So I think we know who has the edge on that one at this point.
Were you waiting to break this story for that specifically? Or did it just happen to fall in your lap that way?
No, I had it in the works for a while, and then I finally got the renderings. Like, just the way things worked out, I got the renderings like 10 hours after SFA started their social media parade. So it just worked out perfect.
Lovely. Well, Josh, I'll be at Huntsville on Friday, man. We'll catch up before the game. So
good deal, man. We'll tell the listeners where they can find you on social media and, all of the great work you and Justin do over at KAGS.
Yeah, follow us. I am KAGS_Lucas, KAGS_Lucas, and Justin, my compadre partner in crime, who also does a lot of Huntsville coverage, is KAGS_Justin, spelt normally. If you like Oklahoma content, Justin's the guy to follow. If you hate Oklahoma, you may want to mute him on Saturdays.
Or troll him.
Take your choice. We actually encourage the trolling if you are anti-Oklahoma. But no, Justin's the man, and he'll have to get on here soon because I'm sure he'll have some funny Huntsville. He's covered Consol 4 times, so he'll have some funny Consol stories for you guys moving forward.
Absolutely. We're looking forward to seeing you out there. Mike, appreciate you joining us.
Anytime, Josh. See you around, buddy.
All right. Well, that does it for today's show. Just a reminder, kickoff, number 10 Huntsville versus number 3 A&M Consolidated, coming up at 7:30 p.m. Friday at Bowers Stadium. Go to itemonline.com/Hornets for live updates and highlights throughout the game, as well as any post-game and pre-game analysis. I'll also be on the sidelines for 101.7 KSAM doing sideline reporting. I'll also be on YouTube, so keep an eye out for the link to that live stream. The Item Insider podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen to your podcast, we've got you covered. We'll see you next time.